Growing up in the Caribbean, having arguments or heated discussions was the norm. I grew up in an environment where I saw my parents arguing all the time, going back and forth, saying hurtful things to each other. Is always like one person is trying to get the one up on the other person. And most of the time, I think my mom won, and she won with her words, but my father counteracted with his actions, which became physically abusive. In dealing with couples and couples counseling, one of the things that I hear all the time is whenever we are arguing or we have a confrontation, my partner doesn't allow me to walk away. And if I try to walk away, they follow me through the house, or they're following me to the other room, or they just won't stop. And even if I ask to be left alone, that person is always on top of me, trying to force a conversation, the issue. And then there's an altercation, then things get out of hand. And then the next thing you know, we're either fighting or we're not talking to each other. And that happens a lot. A lot of times in relationships, that's the norm, especially when it's a dysfunctional relationship or a relationship that's chaotic in nature. I'm not saying that you can't have arguments where you're productive, because if you watch my video on how to stop arguing, you'll realize that I say arguments are supposed to be based on logic and not emotional. And you can have an argument without it escalating, without the other person losing their, you know what I'm saying. So today we're talking about how to stop doing that, how couples in relationships where one person insists that the other person stay and push through something that's uncomfortable for them or something that they need to address in that moment, how that doesn't have to be the case. Now let's think about the person who's walking away. What's going on in that person's mind when they don't want to stay for the argument and they just want to leave the room, and they're like, you know what, I gotta go. I don't want to be here for this. Let's take this up another time. Sometimes people don't say that, they just walk away. But what's that person thinking when they're walking away? They're thinking that they don't want to deal with this stuff. They don't want to deal with confrontation. They may be conflict averse. And even so, they may know the outcome of the confrontation, and therefore they're trying to avoid it by walking away. Or the other more plausible and logical explanation is that that person doesn't know how to process the information in that moment, and they need time in order to process the information. What about the person that wants to keep going in, that doesn't want to stop? They just want to get this over with. We're here now. Let's talk about this. They're frustrated. The emotions are running high, and something was said, and they want to have they say in court. They want to have their day, and the other person is walking away, and that frustrates them more, and it triggers them to want to confront the issue more, forgetting about the conflict or trying to figure out how to do conflict resolution. And then things get out of hand because of their insistence in pushing their partner to participate in a conversation that they really don't want to have. Now, I understand both sides. I see both sides, and I totally get where you both are coming from. But is that really the issue? They always say, do you want to win the war, or do you want to win the battle? And that's what it comes down to. What's the war? And is this battle worth having in this moment? One of the things that people don't understand or have not practiced when this is continually happening is good, effective communication. Now, the way to avoid this, I'm going to tell you how to avoid it, but I just want to get some of the points in there. So a lot of things are happening in this exchange where one person wants to walk away, the other person wants to continue the conversation or the confrontation. Impatience. One person is impatient, or both people could be impatient, but the person who's pursuing the other person is not showing patience. They're not respecting in that moment that person might need time to process, or allowing that person to walk away could actually de-escalate something that is bigger and unnecessary. Not knowing how to let go of a thought, an idea, or a trigger is problematic. So if you're that person that likes to push and push, maybe you should stop and say, you know what? I have to learn how to let go. I have to learn how to allow this person to walk away without it triggering me and making it seem like it's disrespectful to me, or they're abandoning the conversation, and primarily is disrespect, right? So if you can get past the notion that you're being disrespected, or that you're not being heard, then you can allow that person the space to walk away so they can have time. And that person that's walking away can say and should say, you know what, let's take a break. Can we come back to this conversation when, tempers are not flaring, when neither one of us is heated, when we're eaten, when when we're relaxed, and this way it doesn't have this outcome. The other thing is different communication or attachment styles. Some people communicate based on how they were raised, how they start out in childhood. And then a lot of people, like I said earlier, the big word is something's triggered people. You say the wrong thing to the wrong person is like, what happened? You went from 0 to 100. I did nothing. You started a fire. You don't even know what lighter you used, but you did. And a lot of times people have different communication styles. For example, I'm very direct. So is my partner. He's extremely direct. So we have this constant direct conversations. And then, but he gets impatient with me because I can be long-winded. I'm not being long-winded now, but I can be long-winded, especially when I'm relating a story and I want to get all the details in, and he's impatient with that process. So I still have yet to deal with his impatience, and he still has yet to deal with the fact that I can sometimes give too many details. That is a work in progress. The other thing, direct versus indirect, confrontational versus non-confrontational. There's some people that are just definitely conflict averse. They don't like conflict. Even if they started the conflict, it does not mean that they want to deal with the conflict. They just want to walk away from it because they may say what they have to say in that moment. They may say hurtful words, because one of the things about relationships is that people will push each other's button to get a specific response. It's like, you hurt me, I hurt you. That's called the tic-tac-toe theory, right? It's like, you hurt me, X. I'm going to put an O over here, So you go back playing tic-tac-toe instead of realizing, hey, like, again, what's the purpose of this conversation? You even forgot the purpose of the conversation, why it started in the first place. All you're caught up in that moment when you start pushing the other person or start arguing is the fact that you want to be heard and you have to have the last say. If you're that person, then I'm going to tell you how to practice patience, right? Because that's the first thing. The bottom line is that when you're having those incidences or occasions where you're having an argument, it becomes heated and one person wants to walk away, the other person pursues you, you have to stop in that moment and think about several things. One, are you practicing mutual respect? Are you having a mutual agreement here? Are you agreeing beforehand how you are going to engage in an argument? Because that's going to help. If you tell each other, you know what, we are, if I want to walk away, I want you to respect that I can walk away. And it may take a few tries because I've had this happen in other relationships, but you start the process of having a mutual agreement on how you are going to have conversations, especially arguments. If you both agree beforehand that this is what's going to happen, honey, when I don't want to argue anymore, we're trying to move away from chaos. So when we start arguing and you're pushing me to talk or to engage, I want you to know that I am going to walk away, and I'm going to let you know that I'm walking away. Are you okay with that? And the person is going to say yes. And then, like I said, it's going to take a few tries before they actually get it. Or sometimes it may surprise you and actually it clicks. The other thing is that's part of the mutual understanding and the mutual agreement. And I mentioned mutual respect, respecting the other person's space, understanding that the other person doesn't process information the way you process it, and that they need that time to walk away so they can process, and in most cases, calm down. Just come down from that energy that had them worked up so that the response and the reaction is different when they re-engage. The other thing is mutual approach. How are you going to approach each other? People tend to approach people when they're tired, angry, lonely, hungry. Don't do that. When I'm hungry, don't talk to me. If I'm hungry, let me eat. I don't know if any of you out there get like me, but when I'm hungry, I need to eat before I have a real logical conversation with anyone, because my mind is on eating, is dealing with the discomfort of the hunger pangs. I can't really engage in a conversation with you that is legitimately serious in nature. So don't engage when you know you're at the height of some deprivation, hungry, angry, lonely, tired. Don't do it. A lot of people like to have intense conversation with their spouses when they come home from work, when they're at work and they're texting them, OMG, guess what? Maggie fell down the stairs. Not my daughter, Maggie, the next door neighbor. Is that relevant? Do you really want to disturb your partner with the next door neighbor's business in that moment? Can it not wait? So choosing your battles and understanding that there's certain information and certain time, there's a time for everything under the sun. That's what King Solomon says. And finally, making a decision to communicate effectively. Effective communication is key. And effective communication means, like I said in my video on how to start arguing, it means listening and not just wanting to be heard, but also having the ability to hear your partner and hear what they're saying. When both people are being heard, it is more productive and more conducive in the environment, and it does not involve all the chaotic energy that comes in. Stop the tic-tac-toe approach. Instead, practice patience, respecting each other, and understanding each other's process. Process is everything. You and your partner are different. I think one of the things that people forget, especially people in relationships, is that the person you're talking to is not yourself. They're not always going to say what you want to hear. They're not always going to behave the way you expect them to behave. They're not you. Would you really want a world where it was just you and everybody reflected yourself? How boring would that be? But instead, here you are, you have the opposite of you, someone who may have similarities to you, but this person is not a prototype or a photocopy of yourself. And you need to recognize that, and you need to respect that. And more importantly, understanding that this person, just because they're not a reflection of you, does not mean that you cannot communicate effectively. I just wanted to touch base on this topic today because a lot of people have this issue in relationships where one person is constantly pushing the other person is trying to walk away from the conflict, and then it becomes not even conflict anymore. It becomes an altercation, or it gets out of hand, and then you have somebody stonewalling and you're not talking to each other. And it's just a bad environment to create for yourselves and for your family. My name is Ingrid Felton. As always, thank you for listening to me. Thank you for subscribing to the channel. Thank you for watching the videos. Thank you for liking the videos. And thank you also for your comments, which I value. And I do respond to all comments. I hope this gave you some valuable insight in how to communicate effectively with each other, especially when you're two opposing sides with two different processing formats. And as always, continue to support me. That's why I show up. And I really look forward to hearing your comments. Have an amazing day. Bye.